So, welcome to episode four.
Yes.
I think it's 4 of the Notion Nerds podcast. I am here with Mr. Danny Hatcher.
Yes, it is a lovely morning. Oh yeah, bobbling. It's a lovely morning. It's going to be a good one today. It's going to be a good one. I'm liking the topic, and I reckon we could riff. I'm going to use that word. We're going to riff on this topic for a while. I don't know where I heard it, but
riff.
I heard it. Yeah, riff. I heard it used as a way to just talk on stuff. I feel like I heard it from like an American or Canadian, but I'm not sure.
We're going to riff on this. Yeah, we are going to have a good rant on this one. So if you are new to the podcast, we are both Notion nerds, hence the title of the podcast. We both do consulting. We both support you to use Notion in your business and your life. And we just come together to talk about topics that we care about and the niggly, tiny, weeny, little, stupid, ridiculous things that only Notion people care about and only nerds really care about. Today's topic is
with a little bit of humor in there as well.
Oh yeah, maybe. It depends on what your concept of humor is. If you're
That's
talking,
true.
If you expect really highbrow humor, sorry, you're going to be really disappointed. Low brow, low bros, low blows,
The bros.
Then
Mario Bros.
Yeah, bro, right. Anyway, we're talking about something that both me and Danny see when we do consulting and browse around like so much. This is such a big topic to discuss about. It is having too many databases inside of Notion.
Yes, and it's something very easily done at the start. Like you open up your Notion page, and then you put some templates in that Notion have got, but each template has a different set of databases, just one or two. So you duplicate 3 or 4 templates, and then you suddenly got 6 or 7 databases, and you start adding things, and you realize actually I've now got 4 task lists. and you're looking around going, where's that task? Did I have that task? And you start worrying and thinking you've forgotten something in the system. And it's also very easy once you've built your system, maybe you've got your task list, to then go, oh, I could make a database of this, or I could make a database with that. And then a week later, you've suddenly got 40 databases and half of them you don't even look at or use. So I know for me, I try and combine my databases together so I have multiple functions of one database using a couple of properties for filtering. John, are you similar in that case?
Yeah. So if I want to use more databases, I have my 4 core databases, which I think is the same as yours. It's your task manager, one task manager, just one, not 4. I have my project manager, which manages the vast majority of the projects that I do that have like workflows and kind of SOPs that you've got to complete as you go. I have my areas database, which is kind of where I review everything and keep everything together in one place so I can easily kind of see areas of my Notion that, okay, cool, I need to look at this. And then I have one more, which has just gone from my brain.
Tasks, projects, areas, and then you have meeting.
I don't actually have a resource. I only have 3.
Yeah. I mean, they're my main 3. And then I have a couple of others just for like specific cases. But the difference between the databases I have for specific cases is, for example, my CRM system could be 5 databases on its own, or 6. It could be more than that. But my template that I sell for CRMs is 5 databases. You got people, organizations, deals, products, and something else, which I can't remember because it's in Notion. But in my system, I don't need 5 databases because I already have a lot of them set up. So my projects are my deals. My tasks are my actions. So all I actually need is a people's database for the people that I'm working with. So I've added...
People's.
There you go.
That's what I was looking for.
There you go. Yeah, so I've added one database to make a system that could actually be 5 databases. So it saves those 4 databases, and I'm just using other ones that I already have. It also makes things much, much easier and more streamlined when it comes to the actions on my dashboard. Instead of having these 2 action databases, or essentially task databases, because everything's already linked together. So when I've built this people's database, all I need to do is have one relation to the people and the project. And that's it, because everything else is already built for me. I may need to adapt some of the formulas, maybe adapt some of the roll-ups, but it's much easier to adapt one or two properties than build 3 more databases and work out how all of that fits in with your workflow, because your workflow has already been built with the databases you've got. If you suddenly bring a whole new system in, it's like bringing another app in. Why bother?
Yeah. I mean, I do have some. This is something that I've been going back and forth with for quite a while. I do have extra databases that you don't, Danny, because I feel that some use cases are very unique to you. So, for example, I have what I call my Course Junkie kind of dashboard, which is all of my online courses that I want to take, which has its own need. It's kind of separate. It's linked into my areas. And I may have a related project related to the course telling me to complete the course where I store notes and things like that. And I could simplify that and bring that in. But in terms of like the notes and like when I'm going to complete it, how to access it, I like having that separately so I can see like the specific information that I need to see inside of just one database instead of having to like edit my projects and edit my, well, normally it'd be a project dashboard, wouldn't it? But you're not a course taker, are you really?
I'm not a course taker, but I do learn a lot. And the way I actually approach that is I watch a lot of videos, webinars, lectures, podcasts, and things like that. So there's lots of long form content that I watch. And for those of you listening, essentially, I have an area in my space called resources, which is just like an area tag. It's like a relation. And I relate all of those big resources. So for your case, that course would be related to resources. So I would be able to see that course in my resources dashboard in my areas space. Then inside that resource, I would then have notes on that resource. And because the notes are related to themselves, because that's the way my notes database works, all the notes I take on that course, so say it's like 10 modules, those 10 modules would be related to the high up resource. And then the notes I take on the modules will be related to the module. So maybe I've got 10 notes on module 1, and that module 1 is related to the course. All of those things would be linked together, and all of those things would be viewable inside the resource. So when I go into the resource, the actual like page of the resource, i.e. the course, I would have a linked database for the notes. So I can see what notes I've taken. So I can go all the way down the rabbit hole and go from the course all the way down to like the smallest flashcard that I made from like a note of a note of a note of a module. But I don't have to see all of that at once. I can just see there's the course, there's the modules, and then I can go down where I want to. So I actually combine that into my notes database, because my notes database is humongous.
Your course itself, or the content, the long form content, is a note.
Yes.
See, that's where we differ. So a course often has. That's quite clever. I quite like that. But
you're going to be like, I don't like it.
Yeah, I like how you thought about it, and I've been thinking of putting the lesson notes, taking it out of like just the notes inside of the page on the Course Junkies and putting it inside my notes database. But I don't like the high going down notes, because that notes database would be a bloody mess by the end of it.
You say that, but I mean, I've got definitely triple figures, possibly 4 figures worth of notes in my database. But I rarely see more than like 10 notes at one time, because
my question is, what's the point?
Sorry?
What's the point then?
Of what?
Of having that many notes?
Because they're all related in different spaces. Like, so I keep my ideas. So all the video ideas that I have are in my notes database, and then they are tagged with idea, which is, this is nerdy. So I don't have a select property in my notes database. I have a URL property, because when I
love this.
Because when I clip a note from Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, blog, whatever, it gives me a URL. Most of the time, all the time, I haven't found a situation yet. Those notes typically are resources. or they are very quick notes. So I will need the URL. When I've made an actionable note from that resource, it no longer has a URL. So what I do is I use that URL property for tagging. And because it's essentially a text property, I can put as many tags in there as I want, and I can filter it. So in my space for YouTube, I have 2 versions of my notes database linked in there. One of them is for notes, and that will grab every note that I've tagged with YouTube. But then I can just drag it across to the other link database, and that attaches idea into the URL. So what it does is it puts idea in there. So I now have 2 lists. I have a list of notes and a list of ideas. Then when I go into that idea, when I've made a project, it will then disappear from my ideas because it's related to a project that now shows up in my projects database, which is actually like linked the other side because I know the idea has been actioned. It means that when I go back to the video a month, 2 months later, I can then go, okay, that's where the idea came from. That idea is still linked to the resource, still linked to the note, wherever that is, so I can go all the way back. So I don't necessarily see all of the notes, but they're there in case I want to go back. So when I do my review process and I review some of my older, John and I spoke about this with Marie actually on a recent live stream. So when I do my review process and I review my old videos, if I don't remember where I got the video idea from, because it's all stored in my notes database and everything is related, I can then go back. So, for example, my weekly agenda video, I did that 2 months ago. I reviewed it. I thought, I've got an updated version. I'm going to do another video on that. And because it's related to the note of where I got it from, I can go from the video to the note, to the note, to the note, because it's all stored. But I don't see those notes anywhere other than if I was to go into my notes database. But no one does that. No one goes into that core database. And yeah, so what it allows me to do is grab all of my notes, and inside the note, I mean, I only show in the properties the note that it's going to. I don't show both of them, like the to and the from. Otherwise, I just...
So is your to and from like the when you self-reference? Is that an automatic to and from that you've created? So if you select the from, it will go to the to. So you have a two-way relation, or is it just a one-way?
For my notes, I don't have a two-way relation. For my projects, I do have a two-way relation. Okay. My projects, I have a two-way because this is going outside of like how many databases. This is like nitty-gritty stuff. I have a to and from in my projects database, but I only action the to. So I can say this video is going to this post, whatever. This post is going to this video. This is going to this. I don't touch the from because the from is automatically generated from the to.
Yeah.
So what that means is the from is essentially just like a viewing thing. So I can see how many backlinks go to that project. Then when I change the to column, the from column will change. With my notes, I only have a one relation. And that is mainly because the notes that I have related to whatever that note is show in the page. Like I can see all of the notes that are related to that page in the database in the page. So I don't need to see it twice.
No.
So I can go into the page and be like, these are all the notes that came from that page. And I can just look in the properties and go, is this a top resource? If it's not a top resource, then there'll be something in the notes relation. If it is a top resource, I mean, it will say resource on it anyway, but I can see, which means no matter where I go with the notes, I can automatically see, okay, was this a top resource? If it wasn't, then I have the note to go from where I got it from, but I also see all the other subnotes that I've made from it. And what that allows me to do is I can essentially input myself anywhere in that trail of notes, and I can go up or down.
Input yourself.
Yeah. I can input I put myself into the computer. But yeah, so I can go all the way up and all the way down. And like if I was to do it the same way you currently have it set up with the two databases, I think I would struggle with having those notes elsewhere. Like what you were saying, you're thinking of bringing like your lesson notes into your notes database. I surface notes all over the place. And I like sometimes when I'm sifting through notes, I might be like, I wonder what notes I've made on this thing. Like I may think of a high up note and I'd be like, oh, that's cool. And because it's in that database, all I need to do is just alt drag, and then just filter for whatever it is, find the note, and then just search wherever it was because it's all in that database. If it's in a separate database, I then have to make like a new link database, bring it in, find the note, and it's just unwanted work.
That's fast. So if you were to do a course, for example, would you have that as a resource note, and then you would have subnotes underneath that, or would that be a project for you?
No, so projects and actions are actionable things. They're things that I'm doing. Notes are sort of evergreen notes, essentially. So if I was to do a course, the course would become a resource, and that would be my resources database. Inside that, I would already have, because of the template, I would already have a linked database that's self-related.
So just for everybody else, like a resource, is your resource a database, or is that a tag in your area?
It is my resource is a page in my area's database, which is
that's what I thought. So it would just go literally right into that area.
Yeah. So whenever I go into my resources area, I would be able to see the top resource.
Okay.
And my resources, because my resource area it actually has like a review process on it. So I have some formulas in there, so I can review high up resources on a monthly basis.
Where do you store those high up resources? Is this another database, or is it just in your notes?
No, the high up resources are like my resources. I call them high up resources because notes I also class as resources.
Yeah, that's what confused me, because you already have like high up resources in your notes.
Yeah, so I guess this is me understanding my system and trying to explain the terminology I use to someone else. So my high up resources are the resources I put in my resources database or resources page that's in the notes database. Wow, this is really bad explaining. So I have a notes database that has every single piece of resource, every idea, every note, every resource.
Every piece of resource, yes. English,
British language words. Yeah, shut up, John. So every single resource, note, and idea goes into my notes database. If it is related to my resources area, then that note or idea is classed in my eyes as a high up resource. So when I go into that resources, i.e. the page in my area, the resource area, when I go in there, that's filtered for notes that are related to resources. So it's not going to show me every single note I've made. It's only going to show me the ones that are related to resources, which are the high up resources. I then, because in my notes database, I have a review process for my notes. The review process only looks at my high up resources. So essentially in the formula, it goes, does my area relation contain resources? If it does, do this review process. If it doesn't, don't bother, because I don't want to review every note, because that would mean I would never be doing anything else. So I can periodically, monthly, whether it's 1, 2, 3, I get to choose because of the frequency number.
Yeah.
I can review those high up resources, the ones that are linked to my resources page, on a monthly basis. So if I had a course, the course would become a note in my notes database that's related to my resources area page, which means it would show in my resources page, and then I can make notes inside that course in the linked database, which I have in all of my notes, which would be self-referenced, self-related to the resource. So module 1 to 8 would probably be notes. And then inside those notes, because they're brand new notes, I could then make them a resource in themselves if I wanted to, because I could attach it to my resources area, or I could leave it as a smaller note. So maybe module 1, 2, 3, and 4 were fairly obvious, like fairly simple. They're like introduction modules. They'll just sit as notes there.
Yeah.
Same module 5, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of content here. I need to review this stuff. I will also make that a resource. So essentially I have a resource inside of a resource because they're both notes.
Yeah. I like the theory of it. But in terms of the purpose of my Course Junkie is not necessarily just to store the notes. And this is something that I'm going to explore in a training that I'm going to do in the future about like course management, like content management, turning your content into ideas, storing your notes, creating effective notes, stuff like that, all that nerdy stuff. That is something that, in terms of like taking courses, because I buy a lot of courses, I love my courses. And so I have to prioritize my courses and the way I'm going to take the courses. So for me, that methodology would not work, because every course is a resource. So it is on a kind of even level. Because all the courses, I don't buy courses for the sake of, yes, I do buy courses for the sake of buying courses, but the vast majority of the time I'm buying them. But I think for me, I would struggle because I'd have to add more properties into my notes database, when really it is better to just separate it out. When you start adding...
What for?
So like priority level, why would I want to organize it via priority? To prioritize what course I take first.
That's an action.
Not really.
That's you actively doing something. So that's you reviewing something. So that's you going, I'm going to review this resource. Whether that is like, you put that as like a review date property, which I have in my space. And then you have a filtered view for that, which I do in my review page. Makes sense. Like I review my resources in my review page. Or you're actively going to say, right, I'm going to look at module 1 today or module 2 today. That would then be that
I understand. But like how to decide what, so let's say I've got like 100 courses that I've purchased that I would like to actively pursue. How do I prioritize which one to take? Like, how do I decide? Because sometimes some of the courses are quite in-depth. And if you only have a limited amount of hours in the day, you have to prioritize based on what you're working on. So right now, what I have in my course junkies is I link my course into my project. If it has a project or it has a related, I kind of use the course as a resource, like similar to what you do. I use the course as a resource, and then I link it into either. So if it's a course relating to a project that I'm working on, say I'm working on something to do with like updating social media and stuff like that. So I have a social media course that I want to study to help me kind of reference that. So I use that as my kind of resource and connect it in. But if the priority changes and I no longer need to consume that course and I want to put it on the back burner for a prioritized course, say for example, I don't know, like a bigger paid course, that would obviously need to take higher priority. Now I realized that you could, for example, one of the things I have on the dashboard is like a link to log in, which with your notes and resources thing, that's really easy because you would just add it in the URL, because I have the same thing. But in terms of like prioritizing and organizing why you're doing something, I don't think that would work.
So how do you prioritize currently? Do you use a select property?
At the moment, yes, in the current version, but in the version I'm working out, it actually is an automatic, like I think it's like 10 stars, like depending on how many stars you get, depending on whether it's related to a project, whether it's related to an area, whether it's related to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If it's related to something in particular, if there are meetings related to it, if there are actions related to it that I need to consume it, it will increase the like need for it. That's the remake that I'm working on now.
Right.
You can buy the first version now at businessinnotion.com/templates. And
get the plug out. So my priority system is based on due dates. Right. So I would, because it's an action, right? So we'll take the example, the social media one. Yeah, you have a social media course. You're actively learning that thing. So in my space, I would attach tasks and a project to it. So the project may be complete module 2. And I may have 2 or 3 tasks for that. Maybe it's like read it, review it, whatever. But I will have a due date for that project. Then, so it'll all be related because task projects are all related to my notes. Yeah. Then if this new course comes up and I'm like, actually, I want to do this course, the project due date for me doing that module will be earlier than the first one. And because the due date of that project is earlier, say you want to do the old course in 3 weeks. You've got 3 weeks, I want to do this stuff. A week in, you do this new course, you're like, actually, I want to make sure I get this done. And you put the project due date the week after. So essentially, like, it's the week before the old one. In my list view, it is sorted by project due date. So the one with higher priority is at the top of the list. It's the same as my task database, so it works its way down. So I would prioritize learning my resource with the actionable tasks that I'm using, whether that's task or project, depending on how I've categorized it and everything that I've done. That's how I do it with my resources and my tasks. I prioritize by the due date that I've set for the project, because that one gives me accountability for doing the thing. I'm like, I've got to do this thing because I've got an end date on it. I've got a due date on it. And it also means that I don't have to look at all of the courses and go, or all of the tasks, all the resources, whatever, and go, what one am I doing today? Because my task is on my task dashboard anyway.
Yes.
And that is sorted by the project due date as well. So even if I have an actionable task that I need to make a video for, if that learning task is due before that video task, it will be higher up in my to-do list for the day, which is where it all links back together again.
Just don't like it.
Yeah, that's fair. Everyone has their own preference.
And that, bringing it back into like what we were talking about, obviously keep the databases as low as possible, so that one thing it is to be able to easily edit and tweak things. And if you start creating multiple different types of databases, you're adding more kind of like decisions to where do I put this thing? Do I put it here? Do I put it there? Do I put it everywhere? Like, and it increases decision fatigue. And you're there like, where do I put this task? If you have multiple task databases, one for your courses, one for your like projects, and one for your like areas or something, which is insane. Like, you are setting yourself up for
stress
and like, oh, well, what if it's in the wrong task? What if I need to move it between day? And like, you want to keep if you can turn those properties, and if they are similar properties, combine it together. And I'm now going to be really thinking about like my course junkies, because there's some simplifications I could make which could potentially pull it into the same thing as what you've got. But I still like that separation. I feel like the separation is quite valuable, because then if I want to, I can go into my learning dashboard, see, cool, I got to do this course. But I do actually have like finish module 1 inside of projects. So if I'm finishing a module, like I want to finish a module today, finish module 1 of Profitable Playground or this or that or this or that. So I would still have that. So
yeah, you said I'm going to go into my learning dashboard. That's literally what my resource dashboard is. It's the same thing. Like, the only difference is you have a different name. Because it's still a linked database. Because it's areas, it's only the things that are resources. And then because I can filter for, does it have a project? Does it have an active project? Because if it doesn't have an active project, I know I'm not doing anything with it. So I can, during the review, I can go, okay, there's no active project related to this note. Do I care? Yes or no? If I don't, then it just stays there. If I do, I then make an active project.
That, if I didn't have an active project, I wouldn't care. And so then I would set that inside of the new version of the Course Junkies dashboard. That is automatically set. If there's not a project, it goes down in the priority list. Like, if it has a project which is actionable that needs me to do something, then
that's where the sort comes in for me. Because if the project, if it doesn't have an active project, then it doesn't have a date. So it's not even going to show up. Or it's going to show like right at the bottom because it doesn't have a date. And if I have a project and I've done it, obviously I've done it. So it's miles in the past. So it's going to be way down the bottom.
If it doesn't look as nice.
If you make it look as you want, you don't even have to show. You could filter it out and have it as a different database, like things before today, projects due before today, and then just show the ones that you've done. That's just playing with filters and being finicky with views.
Yeah, it is what I do.
Are you going to put a load of like pictures in there as well to make it look nice?
Yeah, it's got it pretty. People like pretty.
So
miserable sod.
Did you just call me a miserable sod?
Yeah, you are.
And I'm not.
I
I'm
don't
not.
need to see pictures. It wastes my time, stops me from being productive.
No, it just adds on like a millisecond of a scroll at the top of
Oh
every page.
no, a millisecond. Uh-oh, I can't publish a video in a millisecond.
Exactly. Like,
Oh no.
imagine that every single time you scroll down a page with Notion. Like,
Yeah, but if it's something that's just action focused, I completely agree with you. There's no point in having something there.
why have
But,
a page that isn't action focused? Why go onto a page that isn't action focused?
Well, maybe inspiration is more like if you want to become inspired by something, you can go into Notion and have an inspiration. Like it's nice.
I use the internet for that. Inspiration. That's what YouTube and Google's for, and Pinterest and
you and your
Instagram.
YouTube. Goodness me, shut up.
YouTube is life.
Yes, we know you're obsessed with YouTube. You've got into bed with YouTube. We get it. Okay, calm down.
Yeah. Actually, I will have the podcast will have been out by now. I did an interview with Dusty Porter. With the TubeBuddy group, and so that should be coming out Friday. So what's that, in like 2 days now from like the day we're recording this? So that should be the 9th of October, I believe it's gone out. So if you want to listen to me talk with Dusty a little bit more about like the YouTube side, like YouTube and Notion, like Dusty was really curious about Notion and was asking me lots of different questions about Notion that sort of related to creators. But yeah, so if you're interested to hear me talk with Dusty, about, I think his actual name's Dustin, but he likes Dusty. But yeah, so that's the TubeBuddy podcast. If you want to listen to that one, I realize I'm plugging another podcast while I'm in my own one, but hey.
Great.
This is marketing.
we market good. I'm just messing around with our styling just to annoy you now.
I've got Audacity up on my other screen, so I can't actually see what you're messing around with. Bringing this kind of back to too many databases, right? I think there is also a place for specific, like really small databases they're not necessarily needed, but it just makes something slightly easier. So my daily tracking database, for example, the whole purpose of that daily tracking database is to have tick boxes on my dashboard. I could have tick boxes on my dashboard, but that would require me to tick all the boxes and then untick them all at the end of the day. And there would be no way to track it. So the sole purpose of having that database is to be able to see the tracking of the tick boxes.
Yeah, there are really like unique use cases where you need to actually have. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. There are tiny use cases.
So there are some like small unique use cases where you may need to just put like a date property with stuff just so you can track what's going on. Or if you want to be really nerdy like me and you can relate every single area to every single day that you make in your journal thing so that you can have a roll up of how many things you need to review or how many flashcards you need to have a look at, then that's cool. That's cool too.
You annoyed me with that. I hated that. I looked at it, I was just like, okay, cool. I quite like this idea. And then I went in there and I did it myself. And I was just like, oh, why do I have to relate everything to everything? It looks an absolute mess. It's just like every single day.
Only if you can into the filter.
Yeah, I know. But it's when I open my area, they've got 365 days of reminder.
Do you actually show that?
No, of course not. But when I go into my areas to look at it, like to review stuff.
Yeah, but most of my relation properties are massive anyway. Like you've seen my projects, like 300 plus whatever.
Yeah, good point.
And then my task is like 700 plus something, like having another relation property that's got like 70 plus. I'm like, whatever. And when Notion get its out, they can put the toggles into the properties.
Get its what? Oh, his finger. Right, okay. Yeah, you do realise that people on an audio podcast will not be able to see your finger. So there will be a lot of potential words. There will be a lot of potential words that they could put inside of that get there out.
Yeah. Use your imagination.
No.
Okay, maybe don't use your imagination.
Don't.
If you're listening to this, your imagination is probably as bad as ours.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when Notion does manage to work out how to put toggles in database page properties, I can hide all that rubbish anyway.
I mean, you can actually do that now with a.
Yeah, no, it's not native.
I don't use the only like third party extension for Notion that I have is that really good web clipper. There's an advanced web clipper you can have which sets it to a resource. So if I tag something, it'll automatically add the template on for me, like the database template. Oh yes, you're a purist. That's a video. That's a thing you need to do.
Yeah, I have tried it out and I don't like it.
Why?
Because it does my processing for me. Like when I capture a note, I don't want to store it straight away because I want to process it once I've actually captured it. So once I've watched the video, read the blog, whatever, I then want to process and go, actually, do I want to keep this or not? And if I do that right at the moment of capturing, the answer is always going to be yes. And then my notes database is going to be full of a load of tut.
That's a good point.
Like, because I was looking at it, I was like, this is really cool, but it gets rid of that whole like process of, do I actually need this note or am I just taking it because I like it at the moment of me reading it? Because a lot of the time I'll look at my notes database towards like the end of the day when I got a bit of time. I'm like, why the F have I got a note for that? I'll go into it and I'll be like, what possessed me to clip this? Or I'll go through the resource and be like, this was obviously a cool video at the time, but I know all of this stuff, or I've put all this stuff in action already. Why do I need this video in here as well? And I'll just delete the note. I just don't need it because all it's doing is repeating things that I already know and things I already have in my space that are going to remind me. So, for example, the other day, I think it was like a couple of days ago, I had a video in there from Vanessa Lau about the 8 biggest mistakes YouTubers make. And I'd clipped it. And to be honest, I have no idea why I clipped it because the 8 things she spoke about, I actually went through like a year ago. So I was like, I was going through this thing. I was like, I'm going to make notes on this. I started making notes on this video. I'm like, I'm making notes about things that I'm advising people to do in coaching sessions. Why am I noting down my own advice? That's stupid. So I deleted the note. But if it had gone straight,
a whole nother video. We can do a whole podcast episode on that, I think.
Yeah. But if it had gone straight into my database, it would have been stored and it would have appeared in my resources in like a month's time, and it would. And then it was like, then I'd have like loads of notes, and I'm like, what is the point of this? Like,
having a purpose to taking notes. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, like the idea of it is nice.
Yeah.
I think if my space relied on me tagging things that quickly, that early, then yes, it'd be useful. But because I like to process my notes,
the bit that I like with that is I can have it tagged as a master resource, and then as I go through, so say for example I have a bit of extra time and I want to go through and I'm looking at this like article that I'm reading, and there are certain points that I really like, I can highlight those points.
Pause for a sec. When you clip, do you clip it to one database or do you have multiple databases you clip to? Because I know you said you have.
No. It goes straight into my note. It goes straight into my brain dump, which is my notes database.
Right.
And then what happens is I go through it again. If I normally clip it when I know I'm going to find something of value, if it's someone that I respect and like reading their content and know it's high value, I don't just clip every YouTube video under the sun. I actually very rarely clip YouTube videos because
so annoying. For those that can't see me, there we go. There was a bit of hair that was like in the middle of my head and it was really off-putting and I couldn't put it back in my hair. That sounds really weird. Put my hair back in my hair. But yeah, I so need a haircut. It's too long. Like
when I clip something, often it's because I'm going to go through it and review it at that moment. And so with this extension, you can actually highlight sections and it will add a bullet at the end. Now, I hate the fact it's at the end. I want it at the top, but that's beside the point. And then I can turn those, like it takes out. So I highlight a section, right? And then it will take that section and add it to the end, like as a separate thing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And so that creates a very short like clip of the important parts, which I then turn into a note using inline page creation. But I would add it to my notes database that way.
Interesting.
Or I'm just trying to use inline pages because it's a function we have, which for anyone watching who are new to Notion, do not do that. Do not try to use every single feature. Leave it for nerds like us to try and figure out the use case.
Yeah, and I haven't found one yet.
No, me neither. That's a whole nother episode.
Like, so making a note, I use the alt drag, as you know. So I duplicate the important part of a note. So it's still in the main resource. So when I go back to it, I can still read the whole thing rather than it just having like these random chunks just lost. But they become what Tiago calls packets of information,
Yes, yeah.
which are basically like they're small packets of information. They're small like notes of information from a higher resource. Yes. And I have self-related database inside my note, which I mentioned earlier. So I would alt drag it across, and then I can make notes from the note I've made in the resource.
So you actually have when you kind of process your notes, you have a notes page to process it. So it's
So when I clip something or grab something in, there'll be a template depending on what note it is. If it's a resource note, then obviously I click the resource template, and that will input four linked databases: a task, a project, a flashcard, and a notes database, all self-referenced to the current note that I'm taking.
Okay.
And then the stuff is on the left. So if it's a video, the video will just go there, and then I'll make the notes below it. And then if I want to make those notes an actual note rather than just like a footnote, I will then alt drag it into the notes database, which turns it into its own note, which is related.
Yeah.
Which is related to the resource.
Let's leave the notes discussion for another episode, which I have actually added into our ideas database. I think some point during the end, as we're getting through this process, we're going to actually go through a whole process of how we run these podcasts. I think we can do it for another while, but that's something we're going to be doing in another episode.
I might make a video on that.
Huh?
I might make a video on that.
Yeah, me too.
You making a video?
We had nearly got through an entire episode without you bringing up the video shit.
We're 42 minutes in.
We are 42 minutes in. We managed to escape you talking
But to be fair, you are way better than me at podcast creation.
Thank you.
Because you're the only one that's done it.
Pretty much. He just shows up and I'm doing all the work.
Well, as long as it gets published, I'm okay. As long as it gets published, I will give you a thumbs up. I will give you a public thumbs up when it's published.
The first episode is scheduled to be published. Asshole. And now that I'm not doing transcriptions for the whole bloody thing, the rest of them will be published this week as of today on the 7th. And so in 2 weeks' time, I think it should go live everywhere.
I think that's an interesting point as well to make. And I'm going to relate this to the topic as well. So I'm going to do a whole segue thing.
Professional podcaster.
PPs. We are PPs. So you said like the workflow, and with transcripting using Descript, like if something isn't working, if there is a friction point to the workflow that's stopping you from getting it done, you've decided to not do it or only do it for this small thing. And it's the same thing with the databases.
Yes.
If there is a friction point, i.e. you have too many databases or not enough databases, then find the solution for it. So in most cases, the friction points that I see with my clients is they have too many databases and they need to decrease it. However, having said that, some of the friction points we have in our spaces, we actually need another database just to do that small thing, whether it is a people's database. So it's finding that friction point with your workflow, and then so essentially you're defining the problem, your friction point, and then finding a solution for that, which could be adding or taking away databases. What did you think of that segue?
I thought that was that was PP. That was definite PP.
Yep. I'll take the big PPs. PP. Take the PPs. We need like a thingy that comes up on screen like PPs.
You're not adding more work for me to do. Cheers.
See, but that's just something in like video editing. You could just make like a PP's title, just make it as like a default thing, and every time someone says PP, just put it at the top of the script. Because you're going to be going through the video anyway.
Literally just end up live streaming these.
Sorry?
If we live stream these directly to our YouTube video using my streaming stuff, because I can press buttons and make things come up, we could very easily do that.
Right. As a side note, I had to get Zoom Pro.
I knew you would.
Yeah, I know I would as well. But yeah, I did it last night. I was like, no, I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and do
it. Tasty bullets.
Yes.
And on that note,
I think we've done pretty well, to be fair. I mean, that's 45 minutes. So that's pretty good, to be fair.
That's a pretty short one. There's not enough jokes in this one. We've not laughed.
No, it's not. Well, I think it was starting to get less serious towards the end.
Yeah, but this is a really important topic because we see that every single time we speak to people. It's just like, I have like 8 databases, I have 8 pages, and that's another topic to talk about: pages versus databases. That's a pretty good one.
That's a nice one as well. Just while John's writing down a note in his notes database that we've spoken about at length, if you have any feedback for us about whether you want longer podcasts, shorter podcasts, more humor, less humor, more nerdy stuff, less nerdy stuff, let us know. Like, contact us either Twitter, in the comment section of wherever you're listening to, in the video, if it goes up onto YouTube, and wherever you can find contacting us. Just let us know, like, give us feedback. Like, we are quite happy to talk for hours and hours about stuff. But if no one's really listening, it's just us talking, we may not do the podcast, if you know what I mean.
So please let us know what you think. If you're enjoying it, if you're not, please share it around. Like, we're going to be really crap at monetizing this thing, so it is just for free Notion content for as many people who want
entertainment.
Entertainment
for Notion.
Entertainment. This is entertainment. Notion entertainment.
Exactly.
This is Notion entertainment. It's taking the seriousness and like removing it and making it just all about having fun. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to getting things done, if you're not having fun, it sucks. Like, if it's not having fun, you will not get things done. You will do nothing. You will get distracted and distract yourself with anything else around that you can.
We're taking the N out of Notion and putting it in entertainment.
Yes, we are professionals.
We are entertainment PPs.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Notion Nerds podcast. We will see you all next week. Please do review us. If you're on you can see us on YouTube as well. We don't have a cool domain name yet because and we will see you on the next episode next week. Bye
Guys.
Stop recording.